My name is Anna. I am 25 years old and work as an architect. While handling my duties at a local architectural firm, I spend my days off relaxing by reading books. My childhood was unimaginably tumultuous, a stark contrast to my current peaceful life. The person who brought me happiness was not my biological parents, but my aunt, who is always cheerful and overflowing with love, 12 years older than me. Today, I want to talk about precious memories with her. As a child, I was treated coldly by my strict parents, especially noticeable in the first grade. Making such a simple mistake. Don't you think it's embarrassing not to get a perfect score on a first grader's test? They scolded, and all I could say was, "I'm sorry." Why did such a child come from us? My mother would say disappointedly. Their sighs were painfully heart-wrenching. Failing to meet their harsh expectations, I was a mix of frustration and sadness. I was born into a doctor's family in a posh residential area of a provincial city, with a doctor father and a nurse mother. From my early childhood, I was sent to private schools, expecting to become a doctor. However, contrary to the expectations of my family and friends, my academic performance was mediocre, and reaching the top ranks was challenging. Right after starting school, I felt unwanted by my parents and was constantly irritated by them. Despite this, I studied alone for long hours at home and at cram schools after returning home, striving to gain my parents' approval. On the other hand, my sister, 1 year younger than me, Doris, was exceptionally gifted academically. Even as a kindergarten student, she was learning advanced material that surpassed mine. This meant that if we took the same tests, she would perform better. Naturally, my parents were captivated by the high-achieving Doris, spending most of their time and resources on her, which led to me being forced to quit cram school before the second grade. Being abandoned by my parents was a shock, and I immersed myself in solitary study in an attempt to improve. Despite these efforts, my parents only saw me as not only poor in studies but also a gloomy and reclusive person. However, the bond between us sisters was strong, and Doris always adored me. This was certainly reassuring, but my self-loathing from feeling inferior to my sister never disappeared. As I progressed to the second grade and my sister Doris entered school, the unfair treatment became even more severe. On holidays, to broaden her education, my parents often took only Doris to theaters and museums in the city center. I was told, giving pearls to pigs who don't appreciate their value is a waste, and I was forced to stay home alone until dinner. Doris, always wearing a guilty expression, seemed to want to say something to our parents but never spoke up. I spent my time alone at home, continuously crying to the cheerful voices of other families I could hear outside. Feeling unintelligent, I believed neither my father nor my mother cared about me. Having thought parental love was everything, I continually blamed myself. Then one day, my parents decided to take only Doris on an overnight trip to a distant museum, likely thinking they couldn't leave me alone for 2 days. On the morning of the trip, I was hurriedly woken up and taken to an old apartment in the next town. There my father, with a displeased look, rang the doorbell, and a disheveled blonde woman opened the door. It was Carol, my father's much younger sister, and my aunt. After a brief conversation, my father returned to the car without even a glance at me. Holding a large bag and left behind, a sleepy Carol said, "Come in," gesturing with her chin towards the room. I hadn't interacted much with Carol, having only spoken to her a few times as we weren't very close. My father had repeatedly warned me, "Stay away from Carol, she's from the lower class and barely finished middle school." Indeed, Carol's first impression was a bit suspicious, with her pudding-like blonde hair and gray sweatshirt. Yet, while apprehensive about being left in her care, I sat on the thin cushion in the living room. Feeling uneasy, I was suddenly greeted by the comforting smell of food. Along with it, Carol appeared, holding a tray with clam chowder and scones. "Didn't have breakfast, did you?" she asked, to which I cautiously replied while sipping the clam chowder, "No, thank you." The rich broth slowly spread through my mouth. Delicious. Right? Clam chowder is the best for breakfast, Carol laughed. Carol's warm smile and the clam chowder eased my tension. Over the next 2 days, Carol took great care of me. The stews and risotto she made were delicious, and I ate without any reservations. While she watched over me, she would smile and ask, "Want some more?" as she offered additional servings. Furthermore, Carol took me to the zoo and genuinely enjoyed showing me around, pointing out, "Look at that gorilla. Isn't it cool?" That day at the zoo was truly enjoyable. From then on, whenever my family went on trips, I was always left in her care. Carol always welcomed me warmly. Gradually, I came to trust her and was genuinely drawn to her warm personality. Carol often said, "I always wanted a little sister like you," and treated me with great care. However, while my parents continued to leave me with her, they spoke ill of her. I heard that Carol had troubles during middle school and did not go on to high school. According to my father, she ended up in a bottom-tier job and barely made a living. "If you don't want to end up like her, don't slack off in your studies," my father would say half-jokingly when he was drunk. I had always believed my father's words as absolute, but I found it hard to accept his assessment of Carol. She was skilled in cooking and a very good person. I could not understand why she was spoken of so negatively. The difference in how my parents treated my sister and me worsened day by day. By the time I was in 3rd grade, I was given only the bare minimum of clothes and food, barely avoiding a report to Child Protective Services. Although my parents were known as local dignitaries, outsiders would never imagine they were capable of such behavior. When I focused on studying, I was told, "You're a nuisance if you don't leave the room, so get out," and was chased outside. Whether I studied or not, the situation was harsh. I wasn't allowed to return home until dusk, and without any trustworthy friends or adults, I had to spend my time learning in parks or libraries. However, on weekends, Carol warmly welcomed me. Carol was the only one who cared about my health. One day, as I was eating the fluffy omelet she had made, Carol suddenly made a proposal. "Anna, would you like to live with me?" she asked. As I sat stunned, she gently stroked my head with her cold hand. "If you feel life at home is hard, think of me as a parent. We'll eat together every day, sleep side by side, and even go to the zoo sometimes," she said. Could such a dreamlike proposal be real? Just hearing it felt surreal. "But you might not want a dumb parent like me," she laughed self-deprecatingly. I blurted out, "That's not true." Her proposal was incredibly appealing. However, I questioned whether I could truly wish for such a thing. Carol was still unmarried, and I worried that living with me might burden her. Additionally, I considered whether my parents would see it as a betrayal. "Carol, is it really possible for me to live with you?" I asked quietly. Carol gave a thumbs up and replied with a smile, "It's okay. Okay." It was an irreplaceable moment. I strongly desired to become like family with Carol, and made up my mind. Later, Carol discussed this with my parents, but their opposition to me living at her house was surprisingly strong. It seemed to stem not from affection but rather from a concern for social appearances. They disliked the idea of having to explain to the community why one family member was missing. After much discussion, it was decided that I would simply stay as a lodger at Carol Clay's house, and no adoption took place. Once everything was settled, things moved quickly. With just my essentials and my school bag, I moved to Carol's house. On the last day at home, my parents coldly said, "Don't neglect your studies. If you become a nuisance and trouble us, we'll send you to an institution right away." Only my sister seemed genuinely sad about my departure. But even my young sister could sense that I was being neglected by our family. As she tearfully said goodbye, she told me, "Big sister, I love you." Though I still harbored feelings for my family, my sister's tears pained me. When I appeared before Carol with mixed emotions, she greeted me with a beaming smile, exclaiming, "Yay, I'm so happy you've come to stay with me." At that moment, I vowed to become a family with Carol that neither of us would be ashamed of. Starting a new life with Carol was not without its challenges. Support from my parents was minimal, and I had to transfer from a private to a public school. Despite this, every day was filled with joy. When I struggled with homework, Carol would sit with me and look through the textbooks, trying her best to find the answers together. Even when I didn't score perfect on tests, she would celebrate my 90%, saying 90 points is amazing. You're really something, Anna. With Carol's support, I gradually became more outgoing, made friends to play with after school, stopped going to cram schools, and spent less time studying. Strangely, my grades improved even without much effort, and I was able to maintain top marks in my class. The chronic stomach pains and fatigue that I had disappeared a significant change for me. I believe they were due to the stress caused by my parents' strictness during my childhood. By the time I reached 6th grade, I had grown emotionally, the influence of my parents began to fade, and I freed myself from the narrow worldview they had created. As my sister got older, she started sneaking out to visit me at Carol's house. She was still performing well academically, which made our parents proud, but she seemed to have other interests and often expressed her frustrations to me. When Carol cooked, my sister would watch with shining eyes and always help out by her side. 8 years flew by since I started living with Carol, and I enrolled in a national university's architecture department. There was a special reason I chose this faculty. Also, because I received a grant-based scholarship, I didn't need to ask for financial support from my parents, and I didn't burden Carol either. On the day I was accepted to my first choice university, Carol cried tears of joy and made my favorite dish, seafood dresta. Over celebratory drinks, she sprinkled her conversation with stories of her own origins, revealing that she was the result of her mother's affair. While her father initially raised Carol as his own child, concerned about public perception, he ultimately treated her without affection. Despite her early longing for parental love, Carol entered a rebellious phase and became almost estranged from her parents, who were, in fact, my paternal grandparents. Anna, you've turned out so well. You didn't follow the wrong paths I did, and you've grown so much. By the time she was 30, the flamboyance of her youth had faded, and Carol's serene gaze was filled with deep emotion as she looked at me. It's all because you were there, Carol. Without you, I don't know where I would be. The thought of what could have happened if Carol hadn't offered to become my family that day made me shiver. Carol caressed my head with the same affection as she had 8 years ago. A year after I started my hopeful student life, a spring day brought an unexpected confrontation at my apartment. It was my parents, their eyes red with anger. "Did you too deceive Doris?" they shouted. What I replied, caught off guard. "What happened to Doris? Which medical school is she going to?" I asked back, which only deepened the redness in their faces. "Don't joke. You must know about Doris. Doris has gone off to do her own thing." My father was too agitated to finish his sentence. I knew what had upset them, so I responded appropriately. "Ah, it seems Doris has enrolled in culinary school. Did you put her up to this? You've given her these bad ideas." I hadn't done anything of the sort. In reality, while Doris let our parents believe she was preparing for medical school, she had secretly aspired to study nutrition and was accepted into that program. She will be starting her studies in nutrition, not medicine, this April. You think you're in a low place, so you're jealous of your sister becoming a doctor. How wicked, my mother accused me angrily. That's not true. Doris chose her path on her own. Don't lie. There's no way that an excellent child would choose to be a nutritionist. In fact, Doris is not ultimately aiming to be a nutritionist, but I kept that fact to myself. Mom and Dad have never really understood Doris. Mom stomps her feet in anger. That's your fault. It has nothing to do with Anna. What? From behind me, Doris and Carol appear. Surprised to see Doris here, my parents' anger intensifies. Then, they turn their criticism towards Carol. "Carol, is this your doing? Did you lead not only Anna but also Doris down the wrong path? I think that's none of your business." As if to protect Carol from my father's attempt to attack her, Doris steps forward. "Don't blame Carol. It was because I showed an interest in cooking that she offered her kitchen to me." Indeed, as Doris visited Carol's house to see her, she developed an interest in cooking and gradually became passionate while helping out in the kitchen. focused solely on her academic performance. My parents seemed not to notice even when she came home smelling of sesame oil. Though culinary school was considered, she could not leave home without a scholarship, so she chose nutrition instead. Like me, Doris received a grant-based scholarship, which enabled her to stand up to her parents. She aims to be a chef in the future. My father's lips tremble with anger. Doris, I'll accept you taking a gap year, so withdraw from the university immediately and go to a preparatory school. I absolutely refuse. Doris firmly opposed my father's unilateral outburst. Seeing this, my mother tried to reason with Doris gently. Doris, going into a profession like nutrition or cooking, which anyone can do, isn't worthy of your talents. Everyone is expecting you to become a doctor. In that case, Mom, can you cook? What? If anyone can do it, do you know how to perfectly fry popcorn, shrimp, or make bechamel sauce? Well, It was clear that my mother was not skilled in the kitchen. She had always relied on deli foods and delivered meals to get by. As a result, Doris and I were completely enchanted by Carol's home cooking. While my mother was at a loss for words, Doris laughed coldly. It's really ironic to live relying on the help of others to cook for you, and then look down on chefs. Well, instead of forcing me to become a doctor, it would be better to give my place to someone who truly desires to be one. It would contribute more to helping others. That's just an excuse. Mom, Dad, don't you know? Actually, my sister is far more talented than I am. What? My parents stood with their mouths agape. There's no way that's true. Do you even know which university my sister is attending? My parents looked at each other. As I thought, you don't know. You also don't know how excellent the architecture department is at the university she attends. She was accepted into a national university's architecture program because she is academically excellent. While it might be an exaggeration to say Doris is more talented than I am, it's a fact that I became a top student thanks to Carol's support. It's true, Mom and Dad. You wouldn't know how well I did in school because you never attended any of my parent-teacher conferences. With that, my parents lost their momentum and fell silent. I looked at them with a cold gaze. The success in raising Anna wasn't due to you, but thanks to Carol. Doris laughed as if she had given up. That can't be true. It's impossible. Don't worry. I've arranged for my tuition myself, and I'm prepared to live on my own. I've already moved my things. You didn't notice, did you? What? The color drained from my parents' faces as they had been furious just moments ago. Carol watched this unfold, looking completely fed up. You both were only ever interested in grades. It's a shame that your wonderful children weren't understood for who they are. Feeling humiliated, my parents groaned in discomfort. Being pitied by Carol, whom they had once looked down upon, must have been the ultimate humiliation. But that was the reality. My parents found no words to retort. Eventually, Doris left home that day with the help of a friend, relocating to another state, over 5 hours away by car. I didn't expect this incident to prompt any improvement in my parents' behavior or make them back off from Doris and me. When I advanced to my second year of university, my parents suddenly called me. I couldn't shake off an ominous feeling. No matter what they say, I would firmly refuse to return home. We met at a restaurant they frequented, but when Carol accompanied me, my parents clearly showed their displeasure. As soon as we sat down, they spread out numerous pamphlets on the table, all from universities with medical schools. What's this? We're giving you a chance to retrieve for medical school. Isn't that a good deal? We're offering you a chance to redeem yourself. Show that you can surpass your sister because of whom you've been looked down upon. Such an unexpected turn of events. How foolish. They really don't understand. But I decided to play along, just for amusement. Really? I'm so happy. Maybe I can actually get in here. To think that you both care so much about me. I really should be thankful." My father nodded, looking pleased with himself. My mother's face also brightened. As if that could ever be true. I couldn't hold back my laughter and burst out laughing. Ha, 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 ha. What's wrong? I just laughed seeing Dad so happy. To take such a proposal seriously? Impossible? After all, I have my own life. What? The moment my parents realized I was joking, their faces rapidly turned red. They are as quick to anger as they are far from the intellectual caliber of a doctor. Doris has never looked down on me. It's you who have always looked down on us. That's, well. Anyway, I have no intention of trying for medical school again. I responded with firm resolve, and a vein throbbed on my father's forehead. Why can't you and Doris understand the nobility of being a doctor? Is this also Carol's fault? Once again, my father directed his blame at Carol, completely missing the point. Carol simply gave a wry smile. "Brother, you're so stubborn. What did you say? Anna and Doris aren't denying the work of doctors, they just have passions elsewhere. And those are in professions like architecture, nutrition, and cooking, which anyone can supposedly do. Even if they are jobs anyone can do, that's fine. What?" Startled by the sudden voice, my father turned around to see two muscular, healthy-looking men standing there. "Who are you?" "Perfect timing, you just insulted an architect and his son." "What?" They looked surprised. At that moment, Carol stood up and gently pulled the young man next to her closer with her arm. "This is my husband. It's an honor to meet you, brother-in-law. I am Alexander Davis. Carol has told me a lot about you." Yes." Carol's husband smiled, showing his white teeth. Actually, Carol had started dating Mr. Davis 5 years ago, and they officially got married when I turned 20. Despite my reassurances, they were stubborn and affectionate enough to wait to marry until I was an adult. As a result, I became close to Carol's in-laws and developed an interest in architecture. When Carol suddenly announced her marriage and her husband spoke meaningfully, my parents were taken aback and lost for words. Next, Carol's father-in-law stepped forward with a smile and began to speak. "Nice to meet you, Dr. Barnes. I am Davis, and I run an architectural business in this area. I understand Anna has heard about my work from Carol and has taken an interest. You are truly an insightful, wonderful person." Yes. "I am planning to retire from the field soon, and I would like Anna to join our company as an architect and learn the ropes to carry on in the future." "How dare you decide such a thing on your own?" As they raised their voices, Davis opened his eyes wide and stared at them. "Even if you call it presumptuous, the fact that you have shown no interest in Anna so far is undeniable. Trying to manipulate Anna after her sister has left the house is quite reprehensible, don't you think? How rude. How much do you think outsiders understand about us?" "Indeed, that's true. But then again, human relationships are mostly about interactions with others." "What?" Davis looked around. My parents also looked around and could see their faces losing color. Other customers at the restaurant were looking at them with cold eyes. Raising one's voice inevitably attracts attention. Everyone is disappointed. We never thought Dr. Barnes, whom we've respected for so long, could look down on others like this. That's not true. As my father trembled, his favorite dish was served. The chef of the restaurant brought it over. "Dr. Barnes, I'm sorry. It must be difficult for you to eat food prepared by us ordinary workers. You no longer need to endure it. Unfortunately, this marks the end of our relationship with you. I will communicate the same to other restaurants." "Wait, that's not what I meant. We feel it is not appropriate for people who can be replaced to use your clinic, so we will no longer visit. I will inform my acquaintances of this as well." "What? What?" All eyes in the restaurant were on my parents. Unable to withstand the pressure, they left the restaurant in a hurry, leaving their food and pamphlets behind. Since that incident, my parents no longer pressured me to pursue a medical degree. After some time, they approached me pleading, "We want to clear up everyone's misunderstandings." It seems the incident at the restaurant led to a significant decrease in their patients. The hospital was originally established a long time ago and had many regular elderly patients who overlapped with the clientele of a similarly long-standing restaurant. Due to word of mouth among the local elderly, a reputation spread that the hospital has the worst doctors who disregard their patients, and patients began moving to a newly opened hospital near the station. The doctors at the new hospital were not only skilled but also personable, and not a single patient returned to the hospital my father runs. In a short period, the management deteriorated, stress built up, and my father lashed out at the staff, resulting in nurses and administrative workers resigning one after another. This further fueled rumors that the hospital has an ethical problem with its doctors, leading to a continuous decrease in both staff and patients. Operating the hospital had become a financial burden. My parents believed that if I could clear up the misunderstandings, everyone would return, but once a bad reputation is spread, it is not easily erased. In fact, most of the reputation was based on truth, so there was no need for correction. However, some exaggerated stories also existed. For example, there's a story about my father standing up in a restaurant and yelling, "This incompetent chef," and demanding an apology from the chef. Though this isn't true, I strangely have a memory as if I had witnessed such a scene. Eventually, the family-run hospital had to close, and there were voices of blame from relatives. Unable to bear the humiliation, my parents sold our proud family home and started a reclusive life in the countryside. 5 years have passed, and I have successfully built my career as an architect, working for the architectural firm run by Carol's in-laws. While I still have a way to go compared to the top designers, I am diligently working every day to achieve my dream. That dream is to design the diner operated by Doris and Carol. Additionally, Doris and I hope to open this place once a week to the local children. Just as Carol saved us, we want to give back to the children. This is a deep wish and lifelong vow for us sisters. Supported by Carol and colleagues who share this dream, I am living a fulfilling life every day.